9, 7 to 9, we have classes like Confucius Analects, Daoist, as well as some Buddhism classes all the way, okay? And on Wednesday, we have classes on Feng Shui, Chinese Metaphysics, okay? All classes here are free, okay? And some of the courses or classes here, we recorded and put it on the net, so you can look through it. Unfortunately, for the time being, all are conducted in Cantonese, okay? In future, okay, we will invite some speakers in English to conduct classes here. Well, without further ado, Justin's the man here. Justin is going to introduce our guest speaker here, all right, to you, all of you.
Thank you, Kerby. So I'm really happy to see people from Sacred Spaces and from elsewhere, and I just wanted to thank John for coming tonight. It was a real honor to have him come and to do this for us. This is one of those things where it generated a lot of interest even amongst people who actually didn't even know what the Guqin was. So it was sort of like people asked me questions in the last few weeks. Is this what I think it is? Is this the instrument I think it is? So I think already in the past few weeks we've generated interest, which I think, having spoken to John earlier, is part of what we're trying to do. So I just want to say thanks again for John to come, and we'll get started. For Sacred Spaces, we'll be here until the end. There may be a Q&A session after, and then afterwards maybe we'll go out for coffee or something if anyone's interested. That's our normal event. Of course, anyone's welcome. We'll just wait until later to see what people want to do. So anyway, thank you. John Thompson, thank you.
John.
Okay. I understand that I have to use this because this is being recorded. But I think you can hear me, so I'll try not to hold it too close. Great to be here. For those of you who got here, should I say earlier on time, I was playing this piece here, which I shouldn't really call a piece because it's sort of a warm-up or a meditation. Qin music is a written tradition, but it's also an oral tradition. You don't learn by reading the music, but because the music was written down, we can play very old pieces. This one is not so old, but the written pieces, this piece is always put in separately from the music. You've got a whole bunch of pieces. Before that, you've got an introduction to what the Qin is, and this comes with the introduction. And I was playing it. It's like a chant. Xian Wang, Xian Wang, De Dao, Xian Wang. I've just translated really the part that you need to know, which is the first words, and then you'll see that it just repeats itself. And I find that for me, before playing, if I play this over and over again, it puts me in the right mood for Qin, which is calm. Generally speaking, calm. I'll be referring to my website. I have a very large website on the Qin, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. But in some cases, I'll say, well, if you want to know the answer, look on my website. Either because it's too complicated or because I've forgotten the answer. Okay, that's the home page. I'm going to start by actually playing a short piece. Doesn't necessarily mean Daoist texts. This is Fan Sanglang, floating on the river, Sanglang River. And it's just enjoying nature rather than serving the people or serving the government, which would be more Confucian. chin is tuned pentatonically, basically. Do, re, fa, sol, la, do, re, or sol, la, do, re, mi, sol, la. There's no fixed pitch. You can't say this is the Western C. This is probably, right now, probably about a B flat. But there was no reason to have it as a fixed pitch because you didn't play with other instruments. It's a solo instrument. So, but this piece I'm playing here, you raise the fifth string. Modern pieces usually don't change tuning, but they all use its standard tuning. But old pieces use many different tunings. Basically 8 ways to pluck. You don't use this finger, which is fortunate since I broke it. In and out with each finger. And this one, where your thumb is coming inwards, that's compared to the wind in the causing rain. So I'm going to play now what I would say is one of the masterpieces of the literature. It's called Song of the Fisherman, Yuge. It's one of the great pieces. It's in 18 sections. And I'm playing it, of according to the way it was published in 1491, a handbook called the Joinshurzi Jinpu, which took also collected ancient melodies or ancient texts, but added lyrics to all of them. Lyrics are always done in Chin songs. They're always done every time there's a right-hand stroke, and occasionally on a left-hand slide there's a word. It's quite word-intensive. So this piece clearly is an instrumental piece, because you're going to be having things like this, where you've got a word attached to every note, and you have to wonder why somebody would do that. The theory is that Confucius played the Qin while he sang while he played, and so we should sing when we play. And so I think people add lyrics to pieces even though they know that they're not really going to be played. And the function of them, for me, is if you know the meaning of the lyrics, it helps you appreciate the melody. You don't have to sing it. So this is using this raised fifth tuning. It's called Song of the Fisherman. of the reasons why, as I said, during the Cultural Revolution, the strings were switched to metal strings to emphasize not doing something for yourself, but doing things for other people, performing. And that's continued in part because of problems with silk strings. If it's damp, as it is right now, the sound loses a little bit of its life, and it becomes a little bit sticky. So I can tell the difference when I'm playing. My hands are completely dry. They're not completely dry in my feel. And when I first started performing, I started using metal strings because if you get nervous, and your hands become a little bit clammy, then it's hard to play on silk strings. But you just put a little bit of oil on your fingers or something like this, and you can play on metal strings with that, or nylon metal strings without any problem. But to me, the Qin, my understanding of the aesthetic of the music is that on the one hand, they're lovely melodies, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring out the different colors that you can get. So that, for example, that's just the same note over and over again, but it doesn't sound like doing the same thing on a piano, for example. Dun, 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 dun. And if you're doing that on metal strings, you don't get as much difference between this sound. And people have measured this in terms of the sound waves that are produced, the sound vibrations of the sound, showing how rich the sound of the silk strings is. If you hear, for example, an A 440 vibrations per second. Well, it's not really 440 vibrations per second. It's a whole bunch of overtones, which your ear puts together and says, "Oh, that's 440 A." Most of the overtones have gone within maybe 1 or 2 seconds, and then you're left with the fundamental, mostly the fundamental, except with the Qin, with the silk strings, the fundamental, the overtones remain more powerful for like 5 or 6 seconds, which makes the sound more rich and more diffuse. Okay, I've gone back to regular tuning. And I mentioned Wang Zichao, who was a supposedly was, he studied the Tao for many years, went to the mountains in Sungshan, and Sungshan Mountains, and there took off on a crane, flew away on a crane, and the other was never seen again, or could occasionally be glimpsed flying in the clouds. And this piece is published, I'm playing it from a handbook published in 1525, Thompson. This has actually shredded a bit in this weather. It's hard on. The ironic thing about that is I always thought that the chin would be harder to play in Guangdong or in Hong Kong than elsewhere because it's so hot and humid here. And yet, probably there are more silk string players in Hong Kong than there are in other parts of China. It's just developed that way. Maybe people here are more conservative. Okay, just for contrast, I'm going to play a Confucian piece, not a Daoist piece. And I don't think you'll find, if it feels different, it's not because it's Confucian rather than Daoist. It's just, it's the theme that makes it Confucian, not the actual music. This piece is called Xingtan. Xingtan, the Xing is almond or apricot, Xing as in Xingren, and Tan means pavilion. And the Xingtan, the apricot pavilion, is supposedly the place where Confucius taught in Chufu, that is at the Confucian temple. In many Confucian temples, you'll see in the south, I believe, a Xing tree. In the north, it's going to be very often not Xingren, but I think it's called Ingren, silver, what's it called? Inxing, sorry, yeah, Inxing, not ren, right? Inxing. It's is ginkgo. We call it ginkgo tree, which you find in Confucian temples in the north. And I think those represent supposedly the place where Confucius taught. This piece is also from the handbook published in 1425. Sorry. 说望寒来春复秋，夕阳西下水东流，将军战马今何在？野草鲜花满地愁。Perhaps I should have said that there were lyrics in that piece. Most Qin songs, there are a lot of old Qin songs. There's a revival of interest in them recently in China. But usually, if there's a Qin song, it's a song from beginning to end. And if it's long, it's hard to know how it was performed because that piece that I played, the Song of the Fisherman, has lyrics throughout, and they can't really be sung, I don't think. There's one handbook, this one published in 1525. It's the only one I know of the hundreds that are published, that has it has maybe a dozen pieces that have a song in one or two sections. And I particularly like that because I like the balance of the music and the words. The lyrics of that were something along the lines of summer comes, summer goes, winter comes, spring turns to fall, and something about flowers fading, and the world becomes sad. Okay, well, it's 5:15, and I think I would like to see if anybody has any questions. The sound of the water, sort of like this. It's got all these bunfu in it. Now, since I got interested in the Qin, I've always wanted to play the earliest pieces. I learned the pieces that I learned from my teacher, which was about 15 pieces. That was about all the pieces that were being played around then. It was 40 years ago. Now there's a revival of interest in playing more pieces. But that's about what was available. And I learned the same version of Liu Shui that Wang Pinghu played. According to my teacher, yes, technically it's got all this stuff in it, which makes it look like you're a really good player if you can play it. But actually, it's much easier because you just master the technique and play it. Whereas a piece like I played at the beginning, which is the first piece, that's actually more difficult because you have to try to make that sound good, and it's like the argument about which is better, Mozart or Chopin. Mozart's too simple, right? Chopin is the real one. Anyway, the version that I play of Liu Shui is the one it's the earliest one published, which is 1425, and you might not recognize it. It's very different about them because it doesn't have all those kunfu. The harmonics, right? Okay. There are basically three types of sound on the Qin: open string, stop string, which can be added ornaments to, and then harmonics. Qin has more harmonics probably than any other instrument. Sort of the way it's laid out, these markers on the Qin, the gold or mother of pearl or whatever they are, depending on the instrument, mark the harmonic notes, which I think was because when people were first playing the Qin and they started playing harmonics, well, if you're playing a harmonic, if you're playing a stop sound, if it's a little bit off, you just slide into, know it's a little bit flat, they just slide up. And as a result, a lot of people actually, one of the mistakes of the beginners actually is they always, instead of playing a note, they'll always slide up into it, because that way they know they can get it right at the end. So it wasn't so necessary to precisely indicate where the stop sounds are. With harmonics, if you're a little bit off, there's no way to know whether it's high or low. It just becomes fuzzy. And that's because the whole string is vibrating. Sorry. If I touch it here, it'll keep vibrating because the string is vibrating in equal parts. So that wasn't answering your question, but that's just explaining what harmonics are. And no, a harmonic is indicated in, if you remember those pictures that I was showing you that illustrate different sounds. That's represented by a butterfly or a dragonfly, has big wings, right? Floating across the water and occasionally touching you. So there's that imagery, but there's no specific symbolism for those types. I'll play just one more piece then. It's a short piece, and it's a song called, often called Feng Qiu Huang. The male phoenix searches for his mate, but this earliest version from 1539 was called Wenjun Sao, the melody of Wenjun, or maybe it's a melody for Wenjun. There's a story behind it. Sima Xiangru, a famous poet of the Han Dynasty, was visiting in a town near Chengdu and was invited to the home of a wealthy merchant who had a daughter who was recently widowed. And he played supposedly this piece at the home, wealthy man's home, and she was listening from another room and was seduced by the melody, either by the melody or by the words. And they ran off together. The father disowned her, so they apparently opened up a wine shop or something like that in the streets of maybe Chengdu or whatever the small town was. But then eventually he relented and gave them pots of money, and he became wealthy, and he became attached to the court. And according to one story, once he became wealthy and successful, he was thinking about taking a mistress. But then she played a piece called Baitoyin, white-haired intonation, about how they were in love when they were young, and now her hair is turning white. And he should not leave her. And he relented, and they stayed together, according to there's two verses. There's two famous poems. Oh, there's one. The most famous poem, Feng Qiu Huang, is Fengxi Guigu Xiang, supposedly attributed. It's found in ancient sources and is supposedly attributed to Sima Xiangru. Fengxi Guigu Xiang. Feng is the male phoenix. Guigu Xiang, returning home. Aoye Sihai Chouqi Long, wandering the four seas looking for his mate. But this one uses different lyrics. These lyrics are famous because they're included in some operas like the Xishangji, where the scholar plays this song in the courtyard, and is it Scholar Zhang is his name? And the lady he's interested in, he has her maid have her sit outside the window and listen to him play. And the song of that one is Yo Mei Ren Xi. There is a beautiful woman, Jianzhi Buwang. Having seen her, I can't forget her. If one day I don't see her, then it's like I'm crazy. So he then begs her to take his hand, otherwise he's going to, what's he going to do? Just go on wandering hopelessly. Yo Mei Ren Xi, 见之不忘，一而不见兮，思而不狂。风飞遥相兮，四海秋荒。无奈佳人兮，不在北疆。将心来于兮，了谢老为真。而见虚兮，为我彷徨。远年配得兮，细小相加。不得与非兮，是我之奔往。向人生回首离
I'll go downstairs, and if anyone's interested in doing something afterwards, I'll be more than happy to talk about it later. Otherwise, I want to thank Kerby for giving us the opportunity to come here again. This is becoming a somewhat regular thing, and I'm really happy at that. This is the third time. Hopefully we find another opportunity in the going forward. So anyway, thank you very much.
Let's give another round of applause to John, okay? What an honor to have him here. Thank you, John. We hope to come back again, right? Okay? Thank you all for coming, all right?